today we will be discussing gender roles in Judaism, and I believe you'll find it to be a fascinating topic. First of all, it's important to understand that everything in creation is male and female. Every single thing in creation, there's nothing you can look at, nothing that's happening all around you that is not male and female. Now, I don't want to use your imaginations too much, but the whole creation is male and female. There are males and females in this room listening to this class. The shelves are being held up via male and female. There's pegs holding those shelves up. This building's all being held up by an entire engineering network that's holding you up high above the Kotel Plaza. It's all made of male and female. In fact, there's nothing you will look at that isn't somehow male and female relating. And so too the Torah is very much relating in male and female. For example, the 6 days of the week are connected to the letter Vav, which is the number 6. The letter Vav, okay, that's called a Vav in Hebrew, and it equals 6. Okay, and that relates to the 6 days of creation, which are the 6 days that we do our thing and do our work and make our difference in the world. And the 7th day, which is the Zion, okay, the Zion, which is that's the letter Zion, and it is the number 7. And the number 7 represents the feminine or the receiving time of work, meaning 6 days of asserting, which in the world Kabbalistically of the masculine has to do with causing, asserting. All the things I already mentioned that are in this room, like how your table's been formed and all that stuff. So the masculine's asserting. Okay, they call even outlets and plugs are called male and female. Okay, there's one thing that's asserting, okay, and the other is the receiving. So the asserting is the Vav, the 6, and you see it's a vector. It looks like a spear. It looks like an arrow. It looks like, it's a vector. It's just going off like that. Whereas the Zion is nice and curvy. Okay, again, this represents the masculine. Is there an E at the end? And the feminine. It's nice and curvy. You see, it stops the Vav from going any further, right? It's capping the Vav, because men need a wife. As it says in Genesis, Lo tov adam liot levado. It's not good for a man to be alone. He needs a woman. He needs a cap. Every bottle has its cap. Yeah. Needs someone to just, a king needs a queen to say, let's just stop conquering and killing and perhaps just count our riches for the rest of our lives or something. The world had been destroyed a long time ago if it wasn't for queens. And again, the Zion represents the number 7, and 7 is the number of nature because they're connected to nature. How in nature is the number 7? So 7 shows up everywhere in nature. It is the colors of the rainbow. It is the notes in the octave. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1. It's time. Like, even though the solar system, the solar calendar doesn't need 7s, but it does, because every society that ever tried anything but a 7-day week fell apart. The lunar calendar is obviously in 7s. Okay, the lunar calendar goes in 7s. And women have their own calendar, their own clock in their reproductive system, and their reproductive organs is also working in the number 7. It's also working in 7s. And women are uniquely connected to the world of nature, to the world of 7s. And again, to masculine, which we're calling the asserter, versus what's called the receiver. Okay? The asserter and the receiver. The feminine attribute is the attribute of receiving. It creates a space for things to occur. And that's just like Shabbat. Shabbat, we refrain from all our doing, all our asserting, because you assert yourself all over creation. There are 39 acts that we have to refrain from on the seventh day, on Shabbat. 39 creative acts. Well, when you look at all those creative acts, you'll notice that every one of those acts is manipulating the world in some way. Taking from raw to cooked, from off to on, from lit to extinguished, you name it, like from this domain, like a private domain, to a public domain. I'm shifting an object from one domain to another. I'm always manipulating something, meaning I'm always asserting myself on the creation in some way. Comes along the seventh day, the day that's dedicated to the feminine attribute of just receiving. And I have to take my sticky fingers now out of my manipulating the world and just let it be. Let it be, let it be, let it be, let it be. Keeping Shabbos Kodesh, let it be. Gotta just let it be. And stop asserting yourself on the world. Stop making your mark. And stop pretending anyone's going to remember you 100 years from now. And that for men is very disconcerting. Men like to make their mark all over the place. They, like on lampposts and bus benches and everywhere around, men like to have a sense they're going to be kind of around, longer than they will actually be around. And whereas the feminine attribute is much more experiential, much more interested in now. What's happening now? What can we do now? What's connecting now? And guess who's in the now, by the way? Where is God? First of all, when is God? Now. Where is God? Now. And what's the interface between God and creation? Right here, right now. So you can either assert yourself on the world and play God, not just 6 days a week. You can play God 7 days a week. A lot of people do. Or you can slide into home plate on the seventh day, on Shabbat. Slide into home plate and just go to the feminine aspect of just receiving a relationship with God for 24 hours of just receiving mode. Now, there's a peculiar thing, and that is that God is referred to in the Torah in the masculine. God is always referred in the masculine. Why is that peculiar? So that's peculiar because God obviously doesn't have genitals. I mean, if he did, it would be something really scary. God is an infinite being. God is not male. God is not female. God doesn't have anatomy. Yet the Torah seems to have no problem, and our prayer book seems to have no problem, always referring to God in the masculine. Always in the masculine. There is once or twice the prayer book refers to God in the feminine, but it's very funny because, well, I'll explain in a minute. But the reason why God is referred to in the masculine isn't because God's a guy. It's because what is God's job in creation? God's job in creation is to cause creation. We're not causing creation. We're receiving creation. God's causing creation into existence. That's the masculine attribute. God's asserting the world into existence via that, primordial nuclear blasted light into creation. It's then filtered and filtered, capped and capped and capped and capped via the feminine attribute, which is capping that, in order to veil it and veil it and veil it until finally, voila, here we are in the physical world, which is all called the seventh. This world is called the feminine attribute. It's called Shekhinah. The word Shekhinah is not a name of God. The word Shekhinah is the feminine attribute of God, meaning it's the physical. Shekhinah is the bottom line. It's the Malchus. I'm not going to go into defining the word Malchus right now, but Shekhinah is the bottom of the barrel of creation. We've got ourselves a problem. What is the problem? Problem is, well, if you're female, you don't have a problem because you're all chill. God creates the world, you receive. You got a relationship. Perfect. If you're a male, you got a problem. And it's amazing to watch men and their problem with God. It's amazing because God's like creating the world, and we're all receiving, whether you're male or female, you're receiving the Creator's creation. You're receiving the Creator. But the problem is if you're a man, so your deepest desire, or one of your important desires, is to assert yourself on creation. So if God's causing, and you're causing, what do you see? Crash. It's a crash between God and creation. We're in conflict with God. The men are. And you see it's so obvious. I mean, we see it all the time. I'll give you a great example. When people are interested in becoming observant, so they come to a yeshiva, there's men's yeshivas, there's women's yeshivas. And who do you think takes longer to be committed enough to God and Torah that he or she can actually step under a wedding canopy, under that chuppah, and promise that person that they're going to be building a Shabbat home for all the rest of the years of their lives? Who do you think takes longer to get there? So it's men, and by far men. There are, I've been to many weddings of a girl who didn't know her first detail about Judaism, and I was at her wedding. She was marrying a rabbi 9 months later. She gave birth to her Jewish self in 9 months. Yeah. Whereas guys, on the other hand, generally if they're in their young 20s, the earliest that they could promise a woman that they'll spend their entire life raising their family and creating a home that is a Shomer Shabbat home, 3 years. 3 years at the earliest. 3 years for a young guy in his 20s. Okay, when you get older ages, so they can, they've been there, done that with so many things that they can take it on a little quicker, but not much quicker. Maybe when someone's 30, they can get it done in 2 years. 37 maybe. A year and 3/4. You need a track record. In fact, in the dating world of the observant women, and you've been to Shabbat tables where you saw like the holy ladies who are hosting your Shabbat meals, you're thinking, wow, I'd love to have a wife like that. I mean, that's like guaranteeing generations of Jews having a wife like that. Well, you should know that most Jews aren't even near their dating pool because they know what men are. They know what men are, and they want to marry a man who's working with them, not against them, in making that next generation holy Jews. And so their first questions have nothing to do with anything about looks or anything about career or anything about money in the family. They don't really care. They only want to see one thing. Does he have yeshiva on his resume? Was he able to somehow, put that wild horse bit in his mouth and just pull the reins on the Westernism in him and actually stop and go to yeshiva and just learn Torah? Is it on his resume? Was it a yeshivacation for 10 days? Or was it a serious amount of time? Now, if he's a CEO of a company, 3 months out of us being a CEO of a company, that he flew to Jerusalem and studied Torah, that rate's very high, very high. But if he was a young whippersnapper who didn't have anything to do, only he was just brainwashed that I can't lose these years of my life because these are very important years to show on my resume. Well, meanwhile, he's a totally illiterate Jew, but he goes to Shabbos tables and wants to marry one of these holy girls. Good luck, okay? They're not stupid. These girls are only looking at your yeshiva time. Because you can talk all you want about how much you love God and Torah and Judaism and Shabbat. Talk to your blue in the face. They don't care. They want to see that you sat and studied the Torah. That you were able to somehow rope in your wild animal, your male attribute that doesn't want anything to do with God. Because men don't like God very much. And were you able to reel yourself in and actually put yourself down at a yeshiva table and study the Torah for a period of time so that her kids have a husband, so that her kids have a father who actually can say a little Torah Shabbat night. Because the average man, if he's doing Shabbat, he's racing home from work. It's winter. He had to take off work early. His boss is already, concerned about the whole thing. The boy comes racing home. The dad comes racing home, and slides into Shabbat, safe, and then just barely gets in the shower and is able to get himself into his Shabbos suit, runs off late to shul, comes home, sits down at the Shabbat table, ready to make kiddush, makes hamotzi, and his wife says, "Okay, kids, Daddy's gonna say a little Devar Torah, a couple words of Torah on this week's Parsha." And the husband looks up haplessly. What Parsha is it? He doesn't even know what Torah portion it is. And she says, "Kids, go play for a while Daddy learns the Parsha so he can teach us this week's Torah portion." Okay, this is the Jewish woman. The Jewish woman is there for a totally different thing, and we'll get there tomorrow. We'll do the Jewish woman. Right now we're just doing genders, okay? Just doing gender in a general, and then tomorrow we'll do who are these Jewish women. For this reason, meaning for the reason because of the conflict of men with God, men with Torah, men with Judaism. So men have been prescribed specific commandments that women do not have to do. They would be totally superfluous for women. Men have specific commandments that tie him down, if you will, subjugate the free man and perhaps break him down a bit into, his place. There are a couple of these commandments. One I'm obviously mentioning now is tefillin, strapping himself down. And by the way, how many loops, how many rings does he have to make around his arm? 7 rings around the arm, that's right. 7 rings, settle down, boy. Yeah, God's running the show. He don't need no help, okay? He can run the show. And he also has other things like, for example, tzitzis. Tzitzis are a commandment for men. Women can do these commandments, but they don't need a reminder they're married. Okay? Men need a reminder, on their business trips and on their, various other escapades. They're married. So when they're hanging out with the guys who didn't get married or never got married, they remember. Yeah, keep those tassels flying. Yeah, remind yourself. A little ripcord. My parachute's actually out in a tree, outside. Another thing that's very important for men, the hardest perhaps of all the mitzvahs, prayer. Men don't like prayer, and they really don't like having to bow down. You'll see most men, even very observant men, will bow down like this. On the bow times, you're supposed to bow all the way down to your 18th vertebrae. All the way down to your 18th vertebrae. It's like a full bow like that, yeah? All the way down. Most men, when you watch them pray, they do something like this. They just kind of, it's almost undistinguishable from the other ones, because they're always doing this. And then they'll do. That's not what Shulchan Aruch says. The Jewish law does not say give a little, don't do a curtsy. This is a bow. This is an opera bow. This is a, Los Angeles Philharmonic Orchestra bow. It's like this is the full, there is no one like you, God, and I am nothing, man. I am nothing. And you're also, we're taught by our sages that when you do that bow, you're supposed to actually have in mind that you're flat on your face. That's what's supposed to be in your mind. Whenever you bow, that you're flat on your face. You are a crusted on a pan here. We need a spatula to get you up. Yeah, you're flat out before your Maker. And we actually pray like that. We do that on Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur. We go flat out, twice a year. We go flat out. But every other time you bow throughout your prayers, you're always supposed to have in mind that flat out Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur bow. That's where we're always supposed to be. You'll notice that, the very last level, like break glass in case of emergency, look where this circumcision is. Okay, it's only on the guy. Yeah, that's the spot. That's where the most selfish, the most you forget about all things. Like all bets are off. God who? God who? Right then, there it is, the covenant. You know, yours looks different. And one of the biggies is we have to pray in a prayer group. We can't pray alone. We have to actually pray in a prayer group. You can pray alone, but there's no promises of what's going to happen with your prayer, because prayer has to be done with concentration. And the nature of being a man and concentrating on prayer is automatically like a huge challenge. A huge challenge, because for a man, he's just thinking of like the next thing he's going to conquer throughout his whole prayer session. And it's hard for him to like actually reel himself into the words and to really be there for the praise, request, and thanksgiving, which is like, God, you're everything and we're nothing, you know. So it's we have to pray in a group. There's probably nothing more emasculating than going to a minyan. You could be a CEO of a company and you walk into a minyan. A minyan means a prayer group. So you can walk into a minyan, into one of these prayer groups. You need 10 men to start. So you're walking in and you're a CEO of like a Fortune 500 company. When you walk in the door, someone says, oh, there's 7. And you're like, who you calling 7? You call me 7? And they're like, sit down, 7. Open up the prayer book. 3 more guys. We need 3 more guys. There's 8. And it's some other very important guy, you know, runs a business. And like, who you calling 8? I'm calling you 8. Sit down. Open up your prayer book. It's the great equalizer. You know, these minions just, you know, and you'll notice men don't like them. Men do not like minions. It's very uncomfortable. And when you're first approaching Judaism, it's extremely uncomfortable. But if you're raised observant, or like me, who's been observant for, you know, close to 2.5 decades, it's still totally uncomfortable. It's just uncomfortable. Like, why do I have to do this with all these men? I'll just pray alone from now on. But there's an amazing thing that any man who says that he's just going to pray alone, eventually what? Stops praying. Over and over. And you know who you are, those of you in this room who said it. Because every time I've said that, there's always a couple guys in the room who are guilty. You know, like, oh, it's uncomfortable in those minions. I'll just pray alone. It's going to be over within weeks, if not days, that he'll be praying at all. Women, on the other hand, they pray by nature. They pray naturally. You can come to my house. My house, there's a lot of girls. So there's also several boys. And you see the breakdown right away. You wake up in the morning, and you see the girls at any different place in the house. They all they get in these corners. You know, I need a prayer book or something. We'll pretend this is a prayer book. Can I write this? So they'll be like in all different corners of the house. You know, you find one in this corner. And a little 12-year-old. She's just like, oh, it's perfect. Yeah. Like that. And then there's the 8-year-old who can finally read it, and she's just like, because she can already read it, so she's like a little further away. And her little sister, the 6-year-old who like can't read it, she's still like, she doesn't know what to say exactly. Yeah. Whereas the boys, oh my gosh, like what it takes to get those lumps off the log. I mean, you need a hammer and a chisel to get these guys going, you know. To get them to go to a minyan, thank God they have some minions go till like noon, so that gives you a good 6 hours to convince them to get out of the house and go do it already. You know, the girls all look at them with absolute bewilderment. They're just like, what is wrong with these guys? What is wrong with this guy? You know, meanwhile, they study when they learn the Torah because that's their daily curriculum. You know, they'll do a great job. But, you know, prayer times, just like, how quick can I get this done? How fast can we get this thing over with? Women naturally pray, and they pray forever. Their whole lives, don't need a group, don't need a time, don't need nothing. They're just naturally prayers. They pray. Women just pray. I hear my wife saying, God, you know, she says Hashem. She's like, Hashem, please help me find Moshe's sock. You know. She's asking Hashem for finding a sock. You know, out loud. And if she still can't find it, she tells all the girls, please ask Hashem to help me find Moshe's sock. And all the girls were like, Hashem, please help mommy find Moshe's sock. We all, just this morning, we were trying to find her train pass, the Ravkov. And so everyone's in the house praying to find the Ravkov. And me and the boys are just like, what? Just look for it. So us guys need to work on this, and you want to hear the most amazing thing, and here's where it really gets special, is what happens. Oh, I was just going to say one thing. Remember I was going to tell you a time we call God in the feminine. Remember I mentioned that? We're going to call God in the feminine. So there's a point in the prayers where we bow, and we say, Modim anachnu lach. We say to God, Modim anachnu lach, and we call him in the female, lach, instead of lacha. And I asked a particular Kabbalist why that is. Why does God switch to the female? He said, because now you are the giver, because what does Modim anachnu lach mean? It means we are gratefully thankful to you. We're trying to give thanks. Give, receive. Give, receive. So we're saying, God, please put on your feminine hat right now and receive the thanks that we're trying to give you. Meaning we put on our masculine hat for a moment and say, Modim anachnu lach. God, please put on your feminine hat and receive our thanks. Here? Now, here's the interesting part, is when it comes to men and women, you'll notice that a man's not really 100% a man. A man has certain feminine attributes, a certain level of femininity to him. Every man has it. Some have very little. Okay, they like shotguns and trucks and hunting and Marlboro and and beer and Harley Davidsons and they're men, man. Yeah, and then you got men who are, they're a little soft and sweet, and they maybe carry a little woven bag from Guatemala on their hip, and they lead poetry readings, and they maybe they teach yoga, and they're they're still perfectly they're men, with wives and kids and everything. But I know I have a dear student from England who's if it wasn't for like seeing him at the mikveh, there's just no way you'd know he was a man. Okay, there's just no way. There's nothing man about him. Okay, every hair is like Jerry curled just right. He only wears pink, including painted on pink pants everywhere he goes, and pink Converse All-Stars. You gotta understand. This guy's wild. He's from a totally Hasidic family. All his brothers wear shtreimels, yeah, and the full Hasidic garb. And I don't even know where this guy is now. It's already been 10 years since he was really close to me, but he was really close to me here. And he's probably married with kids. I'd love to find this guy. And he was, so he comes to Israel. He was studying here at Aish a little bit. He was an expert in Rambam, very good student, amazing guy. Only attracted to women, crazy about women. He was so crazy about women, he was a woman himself, And he, oh my gosh, this guy was hysterical. I had a talk in Tel Aviv with the chief rabbi of Israel, chief Ashkenazic rabbi of Israel. He was doing the Hanukkah lighting. I was giving the talk, and it was like a big event. It was fancy and everything. So he's like, "Do you mind if I just jump in and come with you?" About halfway into the event, someone went up to him because he was dancing to the music that the band, there was a band playing background music, but he just thought that meant dance, by the buffet tables. So he's just going for it, full on, and I'm over by the cocktails, I'm over the cocktail area, just kind of watching him and just going, I hope this doesn't get back to me, Anyway, eventually someone, just wanted to find out who he was exactly, and just a few minutes later, I was pulled aside and said, your student, Rabbi Glaser, if you could just have a little talk with him to just drop it down a few levels there. So, but he thought it was time to dance. Anyway, amazing guy. But what is unique about these guys? So I was interested to know, what if you took a completely, totally heterosexual population? Heterosexual. It's all, in fact, me'esharim. What do you call it? Arranged marriage. So like everyone's already, like you're presented your wife by the time you're like 18. You know, you think, this is who you'll be marrying. Mazel tov. You know, a fully heterosexual, arranged marriage society where there's nothing but that. And so my curiosity was, what happens, you know, you got 800 men, you know, 900 men, 1,000 men. What happens to the kid who's born a woman, the guy, you know, little boy who's really just like my student from England? What happens if you get one of those in such a community? I mean, this guy left England, you know, he like left England. He's still a Torah scholar, still keeps the Torah, still keeps Shabbat and everything. You know, crazy about girls, that's who he was. So, but what happens in the Hasidic community where you don't leave and you don't have any concept of anything? Because he was in England, these guys were, you know, he was in London. He had plenty of concepts. Whereas what happens when they have no other concept? What happens to those guys? Wow, was I shocked to see what happens to those guys. Those guys, okay, I checked them out. They were married. They were, you know, big families and beautiful. You know, their marriages seemed to be great. I didn't get to interview their spouses or anything, but everything seemed to be at least normative compared to all the other Hasidim in the group. But here's the shocker. The shocker is that when the most important prayers of the year rolled around, Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, and there's several sections of prayers, so you send up different people to pray various times. Guess who was in charge of the prayers, of our most important prayers of the year? The answer was them, each time. And even at points where you're supposed to send up the greatest scholar, they actually said, forget the greatest scholar, you know, send up Yochanan. And Yochanan just like moves his way up. He's got the stockings. Have you seen Hasidim in the stockings? You know, moves his way up there and just like gets up to the thing to pray. You know, to lead Ne'ilah. You know, the highest prayer of the year. Lead Ne'ilah, and he makes the entire synagogue melt with his voice and with his passion and with his ultimate being nullified before his maker, and he just brought everyone to absolute receiver, all of us receivers in that room. And then I turned my attention to the actual Rabbi, and I realized, oh my gosh, the Rebbe's one of these guys too. In fact, the Rebbe is really strongly, like his female side is extremely developed. His male side's also extremely developed. So he's got both in his repertoire. Reb Yochanan, I don't know how much male side he has developed, but the Rebbe could be a lion, or he could just be like a rose petal. He's the Rebbe. He's got to lead. Leading's lion. But he's also got to be someone who's just like fully permeable by God. Fully permeable. And being fully permeable means to be someone that is very adept or even naturally born with a strong feminine attribute. God created Jewish women unique in the world. They're unique and very different than their Gentile counterparts. The Jewish women throughout history have been responsible for almost every good thing that ever happened to us. For example, our sages teach us that if it wasn't for the holy Jewish women in Egypt, we would never have been redeemed. We would have stayed slaves in Egypt. Later, the worst sin that was ever done by the Jewish people, the sin of the golden calf, we are taught by our sages that the women did not participate in that sin. One of the other great sins of the Jewish people in the desert was believing the spies when they spoke bad speech, evil speech, about the land of Israel. Having come back to the people of Israel saying that it's too much for us, we can't make it. So all the Jews, minus the women, said, oh gosh, God's led us to be buried here. We're going to Israel to get buried by these 7 Canaanite nations. And the women were like, don't believe those bozos. Time and time again throughout Jewish history, we see that the Jewish women are really what save the Jewish people. All the greatest stuff that happened to us because women made it happen. Moses was only born and saved because of Miriam. So many things have happened throughout history where you're always going to find a surprised woman behind it. You know, as they say, behind every great man is a surprised woman. The Jewish women are the guarantors of Jewish continuity. They're the guarantors of Jewish continuity. They're not going to put up with a husband who doesn't have a Devar Torah. They're not going to put up with a husband who doesn't go out to pray in a minyan. Nor are they going to put up with their boys who don't toe the line of just the basics of what's expected of a Jewish male in this world. They're not going to put up with it. That ain't easy. It's not easy to live with if you're a man who's dedicated to God. So you'll have your wife to support you in the process. But if you're not, she's still going to support you in the process by making sure you do it anyway. But it's not just that. This is powerful stuff. It's even inside of secular women, secular Jewish women, who have no concept of Torah. They don't even know the alphabet. They wouldn't even know what the first value is. In Jewish life, they were raised completely secular, yet they'll still have this genetic predisposition to better her man. And sometimes they'll just simply thrash him for nothing, but they're here to not let you be a spaz, basically. I'll give you some proofs of that. What are some of the proofs of that? I mean, there's obviously the joke. What's the difference between a vulture and a Jewish mother? Vultures wait till you're dead. Surf story. I'm out in a Misto Reef, north of Zuma Beach, northern Malibu County up there. One other surfer. Him and I are out there. The waves are like 6 to 8 feet, tropical conditions, just gorgeous. And we're just taking turns. We're taking waves and just kind of slapping high fives after each wave. It was like, we couldn't believe that it was just the two of us, because normally in California, you're like battling crowds for every wave. It's called wave count, because like it's the whole question, what was your wave count after dealing with half of Los Angeles out in the water with you? Just the two of us, though. Just the two of us. And eventually, though, I started noticing, I think this guy is an MOT. I think he's a member of the tribe. I think he's Jewish. So I asked him, hey, you an MOT? He says, what's that? I said, a member of the tribe, you know, Jewish. Yeah. And he's like, I am Jewish, yes. And I'm like, how do you like that? How do you like that? The two of us, of all the people here, in the perfect conditions, 2 Jews surfing these waves. And he's like, it's nice, Rabbi. It's nice. You know, this guy just couldn't get excited about much, you know. So I just, you know, small talk. I asked him, you know, just a random question. So did you marry a Jew? Small talk. And he says to me, hell no. And I'm like, what do you mean hell no? He says, you think I'm going to put up with that? I'm like, what? This was many years ago. This was like my first introductions, you know, to like, you know, what this was all about. So I'm like, with what? And he starts going on and on about his mom and his sisters and like, whew. Yeah, there was like smoke coming out of his ears. Or maybe he was describing the smoke coming out of their ears, I don't know. But yeah, it went on and on. I was taken aback. I was like, they're not like that in Jerusalem. And he's like, this ain't Jerusalem, man. I'm from Encino. Watch out. And it's like, so who'd you marry? He says, I married an Asian woman. Classic, right? Asian women are the antithesis of a Jewish woman. The antithesis, the absolute polar opposite. I mean, it's like marrying a massage therapist or something. So she was his massage. She actually was his massage therapist. I asked when they met. She was his massage therapist. So anyway, and he goes on to describe her, and it's like, it just, whatever. I'm not going to go there, but it was like, I'm not going to say, okay, but it was just saying all the things about her that were just so not Jewish, but just what he needed. Comfort. Don't mess with me. Okay, just appreciate that I even came home. It was that kind of stuff. I don't even want to repeat it, but that was the kind of stuff he was saying. Story 2, my other favorite sport, which is mountain biking. So I flew to LA. I was going to be teaching at UCLA for a few months, so perfect timing to have sold my mountain bike in Jerusalem and to buy a new one in LA. Now, you know Jewish networks. So I just put out the word. This is pre-internet. I just put out the word, Rabbi Glaser needs a new mountain bike, and it just went. Eventually, I get a phone call saying, I think I got a lead for you. I call this guy out in the valley, and it turns out he's the editor of Mountain Biking magazine. He had just done an article, an expose on the lightest full suspension bike, front and rear suspension bike ever. Fell in love with the bike and traded it for free advertisement in his magazine so he could actually have the bike. And it's a $4,000 bike that he's selling for $2,000, and it's almost never hit the trail except for the pictures they took when they did the expose on the bike. So I'm just like loading this bike in my car as fast as I can. I'm like, 1, 2, 3, 4, like, just get the money before he changes his mind, and get that bike out of there. So I get the bike in the car, close the trunk, I'm heading to the driver's side, and he's like, Rabbi, and I'm like, what? What is it? And he's like, no, I just have one question. Maybe you can help me, Rabbi. And I'm like, what kind of question? He's like, I thought he was going to be like, can you just give me like another 500 or something? He said, it's a rabbinic question. It's about marriage. And I was like, sure, Chris, what's the question? I just kind of leaned on my car. And he said, you see that add-on over there on the edge of my house, all the construction, the plastic and stuff? And I'm like, yeah, I see that. He says, I'm adding on to my house. I said, great, good luck. He says, when my wife saw that bike, and she knows that we don't have enough money to finish the add-on because we need another $2,000, she said, it's me or the bike. And I was like, is she Jewish? And he's like, how'd you know? I'm like, Chris, you married a Jew? He's like, yeah. What's the problem? I'm like, you tell me, Chris. And he's like, what do I do? And I'm like, I don't know, you dug your own grave, brother. All I can suggest is maybe start studying Torah or something. The reason why they're set up this way, Jewish women are set up this way, is because they are the guarantors of the generations to come. And two more amazing examples. Jewish men today in secular society in America, Jewish men today have like surgically reinstalled their foreskins. I mean, they are dropping Judaism like a hot potato. Leadership, forget it. Think any Jewish man out there is going to become a rabbi, a cantor, a president of a synagogue? Forget it. Forget it. My brother was running a conversion program in Los Angeles. This is how it would go. Some Jewish guy would come in with, Christina Cross, his fiance, and say, listen, we're here for the conversion program, and I understand that I also have to be in the classes. So, because, right, you're not going to convert her if you don't convert him. He's already Jewish, but you've got to convert him, so to speak, because what's the point of her becoming Torah observant when he's just being a bum? Yeah. What happened every time? First of all, the guy is sitting in the class, and he sees all the conversion class, and he says to my brother, he's like, where are the other husbands? Where are the other fiancés, the men? And my brother's like, I guess they couldn't come today. He didn't tell him. What happened in the end? The guys ran for their lives. And my brother just would wind up with a group of women who were converting to Judaism because in the first 3 classes, the first 3 weeks, they were so blown away by Torah and mitzvahs that they were like, I'm in. And Bozo, meanwhile, is already like, a couple of months later is on his 3rd girlfriend. But the girl's in. So it wound up being just a conversion class for broken engagement Gentile ladies. But it gets even better. Who in the end stands up to be clergy in the Jewish world when you get, I'm not talking about the observant. In the observant community, all the guys are observant, all the girls are observant. So the clergy are the men, as it's been for thousands of years. But when you let go of the observant community and you go to the less affiliated communities, who actually stands up to lead the Jewish people as rabbis, cantors, Torah readers, presidents of synagogues? Who is it? Answer? Women. There they are again. The guarantors of Jewish continuity is always the women, and they stand up. They stand up for leadership. When the men fall, they stand up, like Devorah, who ruled Israel. Devorah was the leader of Israel for a whole generation. There was a leader of Israel named Devorah. Forget kings. She led. It's in the book of Judges. Shoftim. Devorah. Look her up. Amazing stories. That's who the Jewish women are. And the last example is my holy wife. Holy wife, because you'd think I'm a rabbi. Like, I'm the last guy that needs, a Jewish woman to, reel him in. You'd think I'm the last guy that needs a lasso. While my wife's like, it was Sunday morning. It's like having a police officer behind you on the microphone. He's like, she was like, honey, can you please pull over? And I was just like, I'm like, uh-oh. I sit down at the breakfast table, and my wife's like, honey, it's about Fridays. I'm like, yeah, Fridays, yeah. What's with Fridays? And she's like, something about you and Avrami, that's our oldest son. Something about you and Avrami. He said, let's say in this story, this happened about 2 years ago, so he was about 14. Something about you and Avrami, coming in full body armor, covered in mud, 10 minutes before Shabbat, power sliding your bikes right into our front door, shooting into the door, and you'd think you're going to the shower, but no. You go straight to the fridge, break out 2 mugs, open up straight to the freezer, break out 2 mugs, straight to the fridge, take out the beers, and Chaim, boom, make our bracha. Yeah. Then you jump into the showers for the 2-minute shower to get the mud off your face. You come out of the shower, the 2 of you are making your payas in the mirror while one of you is looking at the second hand on the clock for when Shabbos is, to the second. And he's like, 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Good Shabbos. Good Shabbos. Why don't you show our kids that you love Shabbos so much that you stopped an hour earlier to just get ready for her? Shabbos is coming. Get ready for her. Show the kids that Shabbos doesn't stop you from doing the things you love. But Shabbos is actually one of the things, if not the thing, that you love, which is to be in this feminine mode and just receive for a change. Instead of jumps and power slides and mountain climbs and downhills, asserting. Show our kids that Shabbos is important. And I was just like, I'm a rabbi for a long time already. I was just like, okay, honey, no problem. And I started keeping Shabbos an hour early. I started bringing in Shabbos an hour early, except for when I have concerts, which I often do. But I still try to get home quick and get in as quickly as I can. I actually started going to the kotel instead of going home, which has been really an eye-opener. I had no idea the prayers at the kotel are so awesome for Shabbos night. I knew that, but it's been so many years of me not doing it that I realized there's something really special there on Shabbos night. So after my concerts, I go racing down, But I'll tell you, I have to confess, there was one day that the two of us kind of said, forget it. And we took off on our mountain bikes to a trailhead that goes out to the desert. It's about 15 minutes from here, the trailhead. And we were responsible. We got a couple H guys to at least drop us at the trailhead. So when we got to the Dead Sea, they would be able to just get us back instead of having two cars. We have to shuttle and do it again, get the car again. God made everything possible go wrong that could possibly go wrong. I mean, so badly that when I put my finger the only way to even know where we were in the desert is my phone, my smartphone. When I'm like, wow, I better conserve the battery now that all this stuff's gone wrong with all our equipment. People need to know where we are in case Shabbos comes in. I go to the bright knob on the computer. It's so bright out there. It's ridiculous out in the Judean hills. You can actually see them out this window. I go to the bright knob and to turn it down a little bit, but my finger slipped and it went all the way down, and I couldn't find it again. And the brightness out there, it was absolutely invisible. There was no more screen, so I could no longer call for help. Crazy stuff happened, slingshot Arabs, you name it, everything went wrong. Flat tires that no matter how many times I fixed them, they'd pop on the other side. My son's entire drivetrain of his bike exploded. His crank seized. Even when I fixed it, I finally fixed it. And then his cranks seized. The actual bottom bracket of his cranks just seized. Unturnable. And we're in the middle of the desert. And God made us cry. Because the sun was just getting lower and lower and lower. And Shabbos was so darn close. And we're in the middle of the desert. So the answer is we made it, but I just noticed, and I imagine all of you men have noticed that when your mom or spouse didn't want you to go do something, but you went and did it anyway, weird stuff happens. I often call my wife, and this Friday, I go in the morning, this Friday, around noon when I was on my way back from the mountain bike ride, I asked my wife, this classic question was, did you bless my ride today? And she's like, oh no, what happened? And I'm like, I've been over the bars once, I slid out another time, I've had a flat tire. And she's like, I promise you, I blessed it. I blessed your ride. But the truth is, the day before, she said, can't you just ride Thursday this week and not on Friday? And it turned out I couldn't. I had to learn with someone here at Aish. So there you have it. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.